And this recording is just really for informational purposes. Colleen, is this recording? Okay, great. For some reason, I also can't see that it's recording. Okay. So wanted to begin by just grounding on who's Nina. Nina is a cooperative of racial justice, racial equity consultants that came together with the desire of wanting to collaborate and also do this work, but also thinking about and creating a space where we can do that within an organization without having the constraints that usually come with organization, in particular the constraints around oppressive structures. So we birthed this cooperative. Our launch was during the week that the governor Evers told us that we were working from home. But prior to that, we had done about a year and a half, almost 2 years of grounding. And so this is what came up out of those groundings. You see in your screen on the right-hand side, our values. And I wanted to attend to one of our most recent values that got added, which is this individual and collective wellness, which has been so needed during 2020, 2021, and definitely 2022. And we share those values not from a place of we got this, we have it all together, we do this all the time. No, we have the values as a place of foundation, as a place of here's what we are aspiring to be, as a place of practice, as a place of here's what we're going to need to be going back to when things don't go so well, when we are struggling, or when conflicts arise, or the growing pains of working together, in particular doing this work of racial justice, racial equity, and transformation. Our mission is very grounded in modeling. It's very much part of our pedagogy, is how we learn from others and how we learn from each other and how we wanted to share with other people. But really in the space of modeling from a place of transformation, right? From a place of change, to both co-create systems and structures that can support and build upon the racial equity work that we are engaged in. I'll go down to our vision and I'll read it to you all. It's people, organizations, and systems transform their priorities, relationships, practices, and perspectives so that they are able to continually adapt and become equitable and responsible for all their constituents and stakeholders. So much of our vision is this collective partnership that we engage with everyone, with our community, with our formal partners, informal partners, with our friends, with our colleagues. Wanted to share that's our vision. And then lastly, I saved the best for last, is our foundational grounding. You see in the middle of your screen, with no particular order, and definitely not in a linear format. This is how we ground our pedagogy and the way in which we learn and share with our partners. So when we are speaking to decolonize, we are speaking to not an aesthetic action, but a place of continued growth and practice, not just from a historical perspective, understanding the colonization from a historical aspect, but also how we have been colonized, our bodies, our souls, our minds, our emotions, our ways of being. And so decolonizing is this continuum of praxis. Deconstruct as a place of both understand and deconstruct the ways in which we have been carrying out our lives and our works and our ways of being, from terminology, from the structures and practices that we create around the way we do things. So that's very much part of that. And then collaborate. We believe that this work is for not one person. Every time we see one person leading or that one person being responsible for that, we know that this work won't be sustainable. It can be really great, but there is a caution of sustainability. So we truly believe that creating spaces of collaboration, but also understanding what that is specifically within our hierarchical structures, right? So how do we collaborate for equity in a way that everyone gets seen, everyone is valued, everyone needs to be part of it. And then all of that is in the spirit of co-creating, is in the spirit of both understanding and creating a place for liberation, a place that we can show up authentically, a place of belonging, a place that others will also feel belonging. So that's a little bit of our values and the ways in which we inform the work. Next, I want to share briefly with you all our unique approach. There's multiple ways. Colleen, if you don't mind sharing, changing the slide. Oh, I'm changing the slide. It's gonna be a day. We understand there's multiple folks out there doing this work. Everyone has their own take, and we are not in competition with anyone. We believe that it takes a bunch of people to be doing this work of liberation for us to begin crack the current oppressive structures that we're all experiencing. But we're offering our best thinking around this work. And it's very much grounded and rooted in that relationships come first, and relationships with each other, relationships to earth, relationship to our space, relationships to land, relationship to all beings, relationship to nature, but also the relationship with our bodies. That's very much the grounding of how we carry the work. We also have a collective of multiple experiences and many different backgrounds and coming from many different industries. And we do have a whole systems approach. And although we invite folks to do a lot of individual growth and individual learning, that learning and that practice is to inform and transform policies and practices that impacts communities, that impacts cities, that impacts counties and state and the country and the world. And so having that approach embedded and stitched throughout our content and the way we carry the work invites folks to really think beyond what does it mean to be doing this work individually or for themselves. I'll pass it to you, Colleen.
Thanks, Ananda. So I'm going to just share with you all a little bit about our virtual co-learning community that we're going to be launching this spring, which I believe is probably the reason you are all here today, is to learn a little bit about what we're doing and what's included and what to expect. So I'll start off by just sharing a little bit about what was behind our thinking when we created this virtual learning community. We're thinking about two types of constituents that we hadn't been able to be in relationship with yet. Up until recently, most of the work that the Nina Collective was doing was with organizations that were bringing us in to do long-term kind of large-scale work in their organizations. And we really love doing that and appreciate the opportunity to do that, and definitely will continue doing that. But there are some organizations that are either really small or have smaller budgets, where the approach that we normally take wasn't quite the right fit. And so we wanted to have another opportunity for smaller organizations or organizations with a smaller budget to still be able to kind of plug in with Nina and hopefully be part of a learning community where they not only get to learn together as a small group in their organization, but also get to learn from other organizations that are doing this work. I think one of the things that I've personally appreciated about the work that I've gotten to do with Nina is the opportunity to build connections and collaborations with all sorts of people who really care about this work. And so that is one of the kind of guiding principles behind the virtual learning community that we're launching next month. The other thing that we were trying to address when we initially kind of constructed this process was we have organizations that we've worked with for 6 to 12 months at this point. They've gone through their process and now they're kind of in implementation. And, you know, as is normal at any organization, some people are rotating off the board, some staff is turning over, new positions are being added, new board members are coming on, and organizations were interested in figuring out, you know, how do we onboard people? You know, we went through this 1-year process where everybody has been, you know, trained and, you know, kind of brought up to speed, has common language. What do we do to onboard new board members or new staff so that they are ready to fully engage in this process as new members of our team? And so we wanted to also create something that would be responsive to folks that have, you know, made an investment already in their organizational change as a way to kind of continue that work with new members of their organizations who would be joining. So that was some of the thinking behind why we had put this together. And so from there, I'll just share a little bit about kind of what to specifically expect. We have 4 co-learning sessions that will be live in the same way we are live today. So you'll be able to join and be in community with Ananda and I and other members who are joining the virtual community. Those sessions are all currently scheduled for the first Wednesday of the month, starting March 2nd and running through June 1st from 9 to 11. We are hoping that people will be able to join us in person for most of those sessions. We understand people's schedules are such that they may not be able to be there for all of them though. So we will be recording the content from each session. So if, you know, somebody has to miss one, they would be able to catch up and, you know, watch it separately. So Ananda, if you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to just share a little bit about the specifics of what we're doing in these different sessions. And so you can see each session follows one of our 4 pillars that Ananda went over earlier. So our first session, we are focusing on co-creation. And so in this session, we're kind of building the container for our work together, which means we're going to come up with our shared values and group agreements for our work together. We're going to kind of come to some common understanding around the foundational concepts and language that we use when we're doing this work. And we'll begin the process of kind of community building, relationship building. I'll also say that this whole project has been put together in such a way that there will be learning happening, obviously, while we're together, but there will be takeaways that will be shared in between sessions and homework and resources that are intended to help people bring this work back to their organizations. So we know that this work can't happen with one person, you know, coming to a session and then trying to change their whole organization, even if they're a pretty small organization. And so we are recommending that organizations send teams of 3 or more if possible. And the work that will be happening in between sessions will kind of depend on people being able to find time to work with their small teams in between sessions to really get the most out of the learning opportunities. If you want to go to the next slide, Anand, our second one is going to be on the topic of decolonizing. And this is the session where it's probably the most kind of content heavy of all of our sessions. Most of our sessions are pretty interactive. We really want folks to be engaged and having an opportunity to learn from each other and to have conversations with each other. And there'll be obviously some of that in every session, but this session is probably our most content heavy, where we are really making sure that everybody who's going through this series has basic foundational understanding of the historical context of racialization in the US. And so we talk about the history of colonization and the invention of race as a concept. And we make a through line from that to understanding where we are today in terms of racial disparities and kind of injustice that we're still seeing in the country today. And so, so this one is one of the ones where oftentimes people are learning some new information and doing a little bit of stretching, and then that allows us to kind of continue to move forward in the process. And so I'll pass it back over to you, Ananda, to share a little bit about the next 2 co-learning sessions.
Thank you, Colleen. Deconstruct is where we really dive deep into understanding what are the social constructs that are around us? Like, what is the normalization of the spaces, in particular workplace, but also in ways in which we do the work, right? I was in a meeting recently where the title of the meeting was about equity and implementation, but the meeting looked very much exactly like everything else. And my question to the group was, so are we saying that the only reason that we haven't achieved equity and inclusion is because we have not changed the title of the meeting? Because that's the only thing that is different, right? So deconstruct is very much about understanding, seeing, identifying, and then begin to unpeel the ways in which we show up in every part of your work or every part of your life, and in particular around doing this racial equity work. And then we do that through a frame of looking at white supremacy culture and begin or continue or deepening the practices of using the antidotes and using accountability structures to continue to do this work. And then there is a huge piece around also understanding what is that like for organizations too that are changing, and what does it mean, and how to support organizational change while we're doing this work. And lastly is the importance of doing this work in a collaborative format in order to create sustainability, in order for folks to be in a space to share their wisdom and share their knowledge and to grow this work. So understanding how we communicate, what is the language that we're using, both internally, but also externally to our communities? How do we create practices to interrupt this language that does not depend and rely on one particular individual knowing something, right? Or one particular practice that is very embedded in the culture of the organization. And then again, digging deep into what is this collective accountability around this work will look like. Pass it back to you, Colleen.
Thanks, Ananda. So in addition to the co-learning series that Ananda and I just went through, there are also going to be 2 monthly discussion sessions, which are scheduled for the 3rd Wednesday of the month, same time, 9 to 11 a.m. And those will happen in the months of March and April. And it's basically, if you're thinking about this for your own schedule, it's mostly every other Wednesday, but because there's 5 Wednesdays in March, it kind of throws us off a little bit. But it's the 1st and 3rd Wednesday of every month. We have either a co-learning or an in-person discussion opportunity. And those discussions, our intent is to have some different affinity spaces happening concurrently. So we will have some conversations that are going to be specific for nonprofit board members. So we're going to kind of see what the makeup is of the final group to see what makes sense for how we may break up those discussion sessions, but we will have a couple of kind of specific affinity-based discussion groups happening simultaneously during those times. And then the last thing that's part of this co-learning package is we are offering one organization-specific coaching session, and that will be scheduled sometime in May. And it'll be in coordination with the organization and the folks that are attending from that organization. So we'll find a time that works for you and your team. And that one is really like towards the end of the series to be able to say, okay, like, what do you want to do with this? What questions do you have? what resources maybe do you still need, to kind of take this to the next step in the organization. And so it'll be driven by the organizations, as to how would they want to use that time, but each organization will get one coaching session as part of this package. If organizations are interested in more than that, we do have full coaching packages that are available for additional sessions, but included in the price is one coaching session. And then I will pass it back to you, Ananda, to just share. We have one other offering that's kind of running concurrently with the co-learning series, but they are not exactly the same. So I'll let Ananda share a little bit more about this piece.
Yeah, thanks, Colleen. One of the things that we learned and realized by working with our partners is a need and desire for having a space outside of the typical learning spaces where folks that experience racialized workplace dynamics, folks that identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color, can come and engage into the space, but also get some practical applications for them. This could be also a place where folks that are interested in creating racial affinity space in their organizations, they will learn some tools and some strategies. This might be a space also for folks to connect with each other and learn what is happening and how they can grow this space that is dedicated for folks that are experiencing racialization in our society. And that is happening at the fourth Wednesday of the month, and it's at the end of the day on the days that you see in your screen. And then the last things on the slide, and I'll share with you all the slides after this presentation, probably sometime early next week, just a little bit about our members, their backgrounds, their bodies of work. And then you see any of us during the sessions, during the learnings, and during the Affinity Space. So I'll stop here, Colleen. Unless you have anything else to add.
No, that's good. And I'm just going to pause the recording, and the rest of our time together is really for you all to ask any questions that you have for Ananda and I. So I'm going to stop recording now, and we can just have some conversation.